Hey everyone, welcome back to Inventing Construction. I'm Ross Griffin. Today's main topic, we're going to discuss digitizing site logistics. We have Gary here today. Our subtopics are what, why, and where is SiteHub. We'll dig into that a little bit more. How do we see it progressing construction projects, digitizing site logistics workflow? Super interesting. What is the next big area of development for the guys in SiteHub? And what are the challenges they're facing when selling this to the marketplace? Gary, welcome. Perhaps you can introduce yourself, Gary, rather than me having to do it.
Gladly. I'm Gary. I am Welsh, live in Denmark, have done for the last 12 years. Prior to that, I was a quantity surveyor back in the days. Started that when I was 15. Then got a job with Davis Langdon, worked there for a few years, got myself chartered as a QS. Yeah. And then I got bored, felt like I learned everything that I could do. And at the same time, I'd met my girlfriend, now wife, and she was in Denmark. Moved to Denmark. Back then, the iPad was just coming out. So decided to start a company where you can do sort of quality assurance snags on an iPad, where you would put in your drawings digitally, mark on the drawing where the snag was, and then voila, you got a PDF. So started a company when I came to Denmark. At the same time, I started working with Co-Founder, consulting engineers, and I was there for 2 years. So it was a nice little buffer while I was building the company up. Company started to go well. Met a few guys that wanted to join. We then founded a company which ultimately came to be called Genie Belt. That was about snags, but also about managing schedule and all that. We grew that to 150 people at one point, and then I left that company after about 10 years of working that. So I've always been involved in construction, but also in the software side. That really
the
sort of
innovation
intrigued
aspect.
me. After that, I started another company, which was about tender management in construction. That was mainly in the UK while I was here in Denmark. 5 years of that, I managed to sell that recently. Cool. So that was a nice ending. And then 4 years ago, together with a few people, I joined SiteHub as one of the co-founders. Cool. We are here to talk about SiteHub, and we're now 50 people in SiteHub after 3 years.
Wonderful. I've been following your journey. It's because I also worked in Co-Founder. I worked there a little bit after you.
You met my wife.
I actually worked with your wife in Co-Founder many years ago. That's right. So our paths have been almost crossing, if you like, maybe a little bit early or late. But tell us a little bit though about SiteHub. What exactly is it? Why was it developed? And where are you guys now operating in relation to SiteHub?
So SiteHub, I think, was born out of frustration. So the three guys who started SiteHub, and there was also another guy who also was very operationally driven. But the three guys who were on the path where we started Genie Belt, there was a lot of scars that we had in that journey where we took a lot of venture capital money, and we wanted to avoid that like the plague. So starting SiteHub was also how can we start a company which serves the customer, solves value, gives value for the customer, but is also very much software driven. And at that time, there was an idea that we had, and Ulrich, the founding CEO, started that. And it's worked out to a point where we've basically been able to solve problems, but also have that software side of it as well. So it came out of that frustration to really avoid VC money and start a company that solved problems straight away from day one. That's kind of how it started. And we had a rough idea, and I'll go into that.
And SiteHub itself then is, I always see it because I follow you guys online. I have since your inception here in Denmark, of course. And it focuses on the site logistics, if I'm correct, right? So what we would consider the site compound, bringing materials in, materials out, waste out, or the management of waste as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct. And when we started SiteHub, what we saw was like an industry with a paradigm shift, especially towards the need for more reporting, for CO2, sustainability, all that stuff. But also we saw how managing materials coming into the site and waste or materials going out of the site, it needed to be professionalized. And that's where we sort of stepped in. And SiteHub is a bit of an amalgamation of two companies. On the one part, we've got the operations or the logistics, where we literally have men and women on site that we hire ourselves and that we basically put on construction sites.
Okay.
That essentially is the logistics and operations side, where we put people on the ground to professionalize that materials or things coming in and also things going out. Yeah. On top of that, we, for the last 3 years, have been developing our own software. Like that's my side of the business. That's my capabilities. Yeah. So we've developed software to, one, help ourselves so that we can solve this professionalizing of the logistics better. But two, to also serve the customers, because they're sitting with all these new requirements, all these new laws. How the hell are we going to report on this? Where do we get the data? How do we get it together?
Yeah. What does it even look like,
What does it look like? Yeah. So the software part that we also use ourselves solves that problem as well.
So it's two-pronged then, right? So you're doing it yourself for that side of the service business that you have, and then obviously you can also sell the same type of software to, is it contractors? Is it clients? Who?
Well, right now, the main focus is that we solve the problems of the customers. Yeah. And I think basically we are scaling and growing very, very quickly. Yeah. So the focus is let's get projects where we are professionalizing also with men on the ground and women on the ground. Yeah. The vision of the future will also be that we can say to someone, and we have customers doing this already, but if you just want to do it yourself, no problem for it. Just go ahead, use the software, use our solution, and then you can solve and get the reporting. Yeah. So we can do both. And
it's interesting because if you look back 10, 15 years ago, or even in some projects today, the entire management of material on, material off is a case of order something, we need it, we're doing stud partition, we're doing walls.
Yes.
Order up X number of bales of gypsum board. And
usually the day before.
And the day before. Fill it out on whatever floors we're doing. Let's start putting it in. Whatever waste we have, that comes all out into a skip.
Yeah.
It's not sometimes not even sorted. It's just into a skip and back out. But there's no formality, structure, or organization. I don't want to insult anybody here, but in terms of that efficiency of material organization is kind of what I'm talking about. Kind of doesn't exist. We're still kind of just ordering it the same way you do your own extension at home,
Exactly.
How many boards we need?
Yeah.
I think 15, 200, 2,000.
Turn up in the morning, what do we need tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly.
And it is been that approach. And I think it's all this requirement for this reporting that has changed that. Yeah. Because construction, as you and I know, right, it is a very demanding industry. Yeah. You need to get stuff done very, very quickly. Yeah. And I think in the past, that's how it's been. And it is changing now because of this reporting. If you work with SiteHub, you do have to change the way you work because we take over the ability to, bring materials in. Yeah. We help the subcontractors and suppliers to make sure that when they do order materials, that it's properly planned. Yeah. Because the worst thing you want is 5 o'clock or 5:30 in the morning is 5 big trucks coming at the same time,
all parked outside,
and then no one can get into the site.
Yeah.
And all packed outside, exactly. So we do come in and actually take ownership of that part. Yeah. And that is a change. Yeah. But we can do that because the clients and the customers are saying, we need the reporting, we need to professionalize things. And what they've also become wiser to is that on these construction sites, a lot of and they're highly paid people, these craftsmen, electricians, VVS, all these people, carpenters, highly paid people. Yeah. But about 50% of their time is waiting time. Yeah. It's either 20% of what do I do next? Yeah. I can't get access to where I should be.
Yeah. Material's not there yet.
Material's not there. Or 30%, they're literally acting as movers. Yeah. I'll move this big pallet from here to there so we can start working on it. Yeah. And that's a lot of time that you waste.
Right?
And essentially that's what we do. We come in with people who can professionalize that process so that the guys who are paid highly and should be working are having more time to work. Yeah. And that's the model really for the logistics and operations side on the site.
Creating efficiency in the process, right? Yeah. We talk about this the whole time, the value of digitization, the value of BIM, the value of data, data mining, data management. It's that it creates efficiencies so you can do more with less.
Yes.
So that the people, as you say, that are paid those top dollars are actually doing what they're paid to do and not standing around wondering, well, where do I go next? Yeah. That material's not there. Or it's like the QS and the cost manager, I say manually measuring. Manually measuring is inefficient.
Yes.
And if you're a senior commercial manager manually measuring, there's something very, very wrong in the process. Because that should be digitized. Someone has prepared that drawing. Where is that drawing prepared? It's prepared in that model. If it's prepared in the model, why aren't we getting that information
exactly.
digitally?
I think it's also for you guys, compared to us, it's very similar because it's not just about digitizing. Yeah. I think that's a big learning for us. You can just say, if we were just selling software now, and we were saying to the guys on the sites, just use this software, it'll solve everything. Yeah. It's also important that you solve the problem. And we've really tried to focus on solving the problem fully. by also having consultants that solve that issue along with the software. I think that's a key thing that we try to focus on.
Yeah, it's providing the software with a service behind it to manage
it's the solution.
Yeah.
Here you are, this is your problem, here's your solution.
Yeah. And
fully.
And that can become challenging. And some people would like to take it on themselves, of course. As we know in cost management, a lot of architects, engineers take on that responsibility themselves. It's tradition in the industry. The reality is that sometimes or more often than not, it's better to outsource that, like site logistics.
Yeah.
Very few clients or contractors would consider outsourcing that because they'd look at it as,
we can do it.
Yeah, we can do it. How could it possibly be more efficient to bring a subcontractor or a consultant or whatever in to do that? Sure, we'd only be paying them. Why don't we pay our own guys?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've experienced that. We've experienced that, and that's why we also focus on projects of a certain size, essentially large projects that have a key criteria to be, we need to get done.
Yeah.
And it needs to get done fast.
Yeah.
And we need to essentially pay for the services that can help us do that in the most efficient way. That's why we also see in the future with the software, if you do want to do it yourself, no problem. Go do it yourself. Here's the help for that.
And I think you do target the large projects, the projects that are huge capital investments that sit on the top. But what will happen over time is that it'll just become a way of working. And then the subcontractors and the people working on that project will see it and go, actually, I'm going to use that for all my projects. And that could be tier 2, 3, 4, 5 projects, or even the small projects as we become more digitized.
Essentially, everyone has these requirements to report on.
Yeah.
So they'll all have the same problems.
Yeah. And we build and manage projects in the same way, regardless of the size and reality,
I think the one place where it might not come, or the need will be less, is house building, because they have such a structured approach to house building, the components. The reporting becomes so much easier because they know what they're ordering.
Yeah.
A lot of that can be solved through the ERP that they solve, that they use. So I think that's the area that's kind of okay, but on the tier 2, 3, 4, just normal commercial projects, they're going to have that need.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting how quickly it's changing. And the way we need to rethink how we're doing our projects, the sustainability aspect has driven all that.
Yeah,
your ESG reporting and understanding your materiality and where your materials are coming from, and are they from sustainable sources and sustainable materials, etc. If we consider timber, for example, we don't want to use timber coming from the rainforests.
Exactly.
It needs to be properly managed forests and so on.
It's an interesting one, right? So one example of the reporting that we would have to help with is reporting on the materials. And a client might have a list of materials that is a no-go. But what usually would happen, a contractor would compile the list of materials after the fact.
Yeah.
So because of course you've got a main contractor and then you've got a lot of subcontractors.
Yeah,
it's the subcontractors who are ordering.
Yeah.
So the main contractor has no visibility on this until the end.
Yeah.
So it becomes very much a frantic effort to compile all this list, the DGMB, ENG. How do you get all those records in
exactly
at the same time?
Yeah.
And they don't do it in real time.
No.
So there's one of the things our software does is as they order, whether it's the subcontractors or whether it's the suppliers, we have APIs after they give their permission to pull that information out
from the suppliers.
Where we get real-time list of materials that are coming to the site.
Yeah.
And then we can create rules. So if the tender says you can't have this type of material, you can't have this, or it needs to be forested.
Yeah. You're red flagged or whatever
we
the case.
flag it.
Yeah.
And we scan all the delivery notes so that the AI that we use will basically compile a list of materials, but also all the certificates.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we sort the software.
Yeah.
It's giving that other prong to our business.
And I guess that's answering the second part, is how you see it progressing the construction projects, is that real-time information. It's like traditionally the O&M manuals, and I'd say traditionally because we shouldn't be using them anymore, but we are, because they're still the requirements. It should be the digital asset, digital twin, whatever we want to call it. But the O&M manuals being compiled at the very end of the project frantically in order to be able to submit to get your final account and release a retention or whatever the contractual mechanisms are there. Whereas if you're doing it on the go, the process is so much easier for everybody, because what you're doing is you're closing off components of the building. For example, foundations. Same for what we do cost. We close off that substructure account because it's now completed, but close off all the information associated with that substructure so that you move on to the next component of the building or next stage of the building, etc. And we kind of struggle with that a little bit, I guess. While we do plan and organize as an industry, we're still not very good in collecting that information and data on the go, right?
It's also really difficult.
Yeah.
We've probably spent about 18 million kronas on just developing the software.
Yeah.
So it's quite an investment to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Luckily, because of the consulting side, we can pay for that ourselves, which is the avoiding the VC side.
Yeah.
But I see it a lot in how you describe it there, because if you can do it in real time, then you can flag things up.
Yeah.
But also you can benchmark your way forward.
Yeah.
So if you have a target for this much CO2 tonnage, kilograms, then if you are trending too high in substructure, in superstructure, then you can actually know, we need to make changes
to do something
at the end here, because otherwise, if you do at the end and you pass, then some big fines are going to be paid.
Exactly. It's the same. It's again, I'll reflect it back to cost management. If you're closing out components of the accounts as you're going through with your main contractor, it means that you know you're on target. Yeah. Any variations, any changes, can we get them agreed? Can we get them done? What's our estimate to complete? The exact same for carbon. Yeah, exactly. What is our estimate to complete for carbon? Are we on track with the EPDs coming in against the budgets that we have set? And we talked to a couple of people before about EPDs and the budgets that we set. The reality from a client's perspective, the carbon budget they set is just the budget.
Yeah.
The contractor has responsibility to select the supplier.
Yes.
And the supplier has a responsibility to offer up the EPD.
Yeah.
You don't know that until you're going to the marketplace to test, right?
Yeah.
The different suppliers, the different prices, the different EPDs.
There's quite a long chain there, right?
It's huge, and the volume of information then to test all of that from a contractor's perspective, that can't be done manually. That can't be, Ross or Gary ringing up the supplier, having a chat with them, trying to find a price. That has to be a digitized workflow of some sort.
Exactly.
Surely. Otherwise, how inefficient is it going to be on these major projects, as you mentioned?
And right now, there's a lot of inefficiency going on because basically people are scrambling to get these certificates.
Yeah.
Just to tick the box.
Just to tick the box,
in a way.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like that. It should, because that
there should be value in it.
There should be value in it for everyone. Yeah. So I like the idea that you can get this information as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to. I think you have to do it in that way. Otherwise, it becomes impossible to manage later. If you're on a huge major capital project and you're scrambling at the end, the amount of manpower that you'd need to put into it to gather all that information.
Exactly.
Retrospectively go back to understand who supplied the reinforcement in the foundation that we built 15, 20 months ago.
And one of them might have been fired.
And
or 10 of them might have been fired. They've moved on. They don't want to talk to you anymore, and you can't get anything out of them.
Or the supplier suddenly is gone. They don't exist anymore, etc.
And that happens. So you need to be able to plan for that.
When I was looking at SiteHub, I always figured that it was also strategizing how site logistics were managed, not just materials in and out, but also, how would we do it to be more efficient? Yeah. Directions of lorries coming in, how long, where would they sit? Where would material be stored? Would we need to move material at any point during the construction site? How would that work? Who's going to do that? Where is the site compound set? Yes. All of that stuff. So SiteHub encapsulates all of that kind of logistical aspect.
Very much so. So if we tender for a new project, we'll use a piece of software where we'll basically do a 3D map of the site. Yeah. And using our logistic experts, we'll do exactly what you're saying. Where should the lorries go? What direction? Yeah. Where should they stop? Yeah. Where should the site accommodation be? Yeah. How can we make that more efficient? The big part of our value is at the beginning. Yeah. So we really like to get involved in the beginning. Otherwise, you're just coming into excuse my French, but a shit show, because it's like we trying to fix something where you're trying to put a plaster on. Yeah. If we can come in at the beginning, we can advise in the best way to structure that site in the best possible way for logistics. And if you get that right, it helps so much in the flow of the site. Yeah. So we will do that, and that's a big part of what we do. Yeah. Another thing that we actually did, and this is one of the beginning ideas, we have about 6,000 square meters of hub space. Yeah. Essentially what we do is on a construction site, especially during Corona, this was a big thing. You'll have a lot of materials that you need to order because the lead-in time is quite long, and you just don't know when you need it. Yeah. So we'll just say to the customers, if you want to buy those, big materials, buy them now, store them at the hub, and then when you need them, you can call them down. There's a hub, and our software is also an inventory management tool for our hub. So when they call something out, we'll register that.
Yeah.
When they put something there, we'll register that.
Are you using GIS or coding or?
We're using QR codes, and then we've
codes,
got 4 guys, I think, manning the hub there full time. And that's in Gloucester up there. So it's basically, the idea is near site. Most of the things that we work in is in Copenhagen. We might have a few projects in Uland coming soon, and we would have another hub there. So it gives the clients an ability, and also the subcontractors, the main contractors, to store their materials in a safe, dry space, which has got security, and it's not going to get stolen, it's not going to get broken, and when they need it, they call it. That reduces the stress a lot and manages the logistics.
Especially for construction sites that are city centre, for example, where you don't have the storage space and you're actually just calling down a material, as you mentioned, the day before, and it arrives and you need to load it out quickly because, you know, you're closing the road for the early morning event or whatever might be happening. So it'd be super interesting that that service is being offered now.
It's a massive part of our value, actually.
Something you would imagine the contractors would have been doing, should have been doing themselves with all the sites they have, but I guess
I think they in the past have been focused, and probably still now, on building, winning work, building, and probably because of the growth that we've had and how we feel that we've been embraced in the market, there was obviously a need for that.
Projects are becoming more complex, and the teams are becoming more diverse as well. Depending on your procurement strategy, you might not have a main contractor, a GC. It might be management contracting, where it's everything is broken into packages, like the logistics, the site component might be a package in itself.
Indeed.
Would you guys tender for those type of projects then, or is it a lot of negotiations that you go through, or is it
for us it's about
rinse and repeat
the type of material, type of project, the size of project, and also the customer. If the customer believes in what we deliver, believes in the reporting need, and also will set us up where we can actually take ownership, that's what we'll go for. Because if we are coming in where we can't take ownership, we can't really deliver our offering. If people are ordering without going through and letting us know, if then there's no planning of the logistics, then we're not going to offer any value. So that's the type of criteria that we look at.
It's interesting you say that you need ownership of that process from kind of the beginning to end. We have the same challenge when selling our service in. A lot of customers see us as just estimators. You estimate something, here you go, there's the budget, thanks very much. But we need to manage the change process in order to be able to guarantee that your project is delivered on the budget that we have just set. And that change process is not just the design development, but it's also contractual, whatever post-contract claims might be, etc. If we don't have control of that, then we don't have control of the budget.
Show anything, can you?
You can't, because you can't prove that the change within the project is associated with X, Y, and Z, whether it is client scope change, whether it is design development, whether it's issues with design perhaps that haven't been fully thought out before the contract, etc. So a big part of that value add for us has to be the change management process.
I still remember doing those cost variation reports every month.
Right. And but a lot of clients, they struggle to understand that because they only see you as the estimator rather than that commercial manager, commercial aspect.
Do you think that's a cultural thing in terms of country-wise? Because in the UK, it's just a known, right?
Yeah, it is to a certain degree. I think a lot of the aspects around change comes from a trust perspective. You know, if there's a change coming from the contractor, it must be a change. We'd always say to our clients, but you still have to do your due diligence. Absolutely have the partnership, absolutely have the trust, but you need to do your due diligence, because human nature is that they might have got the calculation wrong. They might not have understood or seen some of the tender material that was produced. For example, the 4,000 drawings that are there, or the 6 different models that are a part of your tender or your contract, you know. So that due diligence is key, because it's just making sure that everybody is on the same page. But that's something I think is changing, especially on the bigger projects. But let's see. SiteHub, then it's just Danish company, Danish industry focused at the moment. Are you outside Denmark?
So our view right now is that we will be in Denmark. Some of the customers that we have might have international work. If we do go international, right now, we would partner up with someone who does logistics in another country. What we would then do is help them by supporting them with our knowledge. And essentially we're building up a knowledge base of what
Yeah.
What is SiteHub and how can you manage this logistics?
Yeah.
And we would essentially sell them a package of, this is our expertise,
Yeah.
take this and you guys be the guys on the ground.
Yeah.
We would then give them the software. So they have our knowledge of the expertise in terms of logistics and operations, and also they have our software to be able to deliver that. So if we do go international, it's that way.
Yeah.
And I think that would be something that we would look at if we opportunistically get dragged into another country.
Yeah.
But that will be the plan.
That'd be existing client base stuff. I was actually presenting a couple of months back in a conference in Ireland, and I was talking about you guys, because people were asking about BIM and, digital transformation and what's the future going to look like. And I always find it quite interesting because I reflect on Denmark a lot and the journey that Denmark have been on over the last 15 years of BIM and the first mandate since 07, 08. And I was explaining to them how site logistics is going to be fully digitized, and you'll be using software to order materials and so off, like your company are doing. And people look at me going, really? And I was saying the natural evolution is that we're going to figure out the building, and then we're going to go, what's next? Yeah. And it will be logistics. It will be down to excavation as well, and using scanners and drones. And people are kind of going, and it's beginning to happen now. The drone aspect for scanning excavated material, and
it's coming now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And all of that is going to bring efficiency again, right? The land surveyor isn't going to need to do as much because the drone technology is there, et cetera.
For me, I go back to what is needed in terms of reporting and to get these certificates.
Yeah.
Then that creates what solution you need to go for.
Yeah.
Like we talk a lot about materials and certificates, but in SiteHub, we try to take the whole problem. Yeah. So, for example, if the client needs to, and they would usually in Denmark need to report on vibration, on noise, on dust levels, on electricity levels, we would do that.
Yeah.
We're not going to be a hardware company. Yeah. We partner up with the hardware companies that specialize in those fields in those countries, but our software connects to an electricity monitor, to the dust monitors, so that SiteHub can deliver the full reporting for what they need.
Yeah, super.
I think that's quite a big thing. Also cameras.
Yeah.
We have cameras put up where we will record the number plates coming in.
Yeah, for the trucks or whatever.
For the trucks. So we can double check it on what the guys have reported, what's the distance, what's the CO2 used.
Yeah.
But what's the type of truck? Is it this size, that size? What's the tonnage? So again, all the reporting needed, we kind of just go, okay, this is what the problem is. This reporting, how can we solve that?
Yeah.
And we've really tried to be flexible there to make sure that the client feels like you guys have solved it.
Yeah. So the reporting being the problem you're trying to solve, if I reflect on cost management again and use a QS, will know this, the monthly reports that you need to do. The monthly reports on projects are for the project to a certain degree, but actually what they're for is for the board and the steering committee and everything to see if the project, sponsors. Exactly, your sponsors of the project. And a lot of the time what we see in terms of those reports is there are often 6 weeks behind because they're based on information that's now quite old. Yeah. You're producing the report for last month, but you're not delivering it to the middle of this month.
Correct.
Because you're trying to collate the information, because it's not real time. You're looking backwards going, so what have we done?
Yeah.
Or what's the risk register say now? What does our ETC say now? And we need to collect each of the packages together and report it. It's so inefficient. And how can you make a decision in business if you're already 6-8 weeks behind real-time reality?
And it's an interesting one because like I've done it myself, right? I've done cost reports. And I remember we used to have at DL a Excel template for the cost report. And you would start it and open like, do you want to enable macros? And of course I should, but then I always disable it and just do it my own because it's Excel. I can do what I want. Not good, but this is what I did. Yeah. And every sort of anticipated change, you kind of have this real-time tracking that the information so you'll always put in anticipated change will be this. So you kind of have an idea, but it was literally on my computer.
Yeah.
Not shared with anyone else.
No, not cloud-based.
Not cloud-based. No. And it's a case of, okay, now it's time to get the cost report in.
Yeah.
I would spend a week compiling all this information and then you create the cost report. And then it's like, okay, is it okay? Let's send it out. Yeah. In the way with SiteHub, we have had to change. So for example, if you look at suppliers and subcontractors would usually order the material and they still do that with us, but they need to plan with us and they need to let us know. And they're not the ones standing on the site to receive. We do that. Yeah. So we need to know what's coming tomorrow and where do you want it? That's a big change.
Yeah.
For them to go, okay, I'll just leave it, for you guys to do.
Do I trust you enough to?
Do I trust it? Have you got the permission to do that? Yeah. Does the customer tell us that you can do that? And what I'm trying to go with that is that there's a kind of change in mindset, but also what the client tells it's possible. And it's the same with the cost reporting.
Yeah.
In a way, there's a kind of procurement client change needed, because the reason you report on old information is because you don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Because if you get it wrong, then you're going to get whipped over the head.
Yeah. Or red flag, earlier red flags, so that you can see there's potentially a challenge here, rather than already being in the quicksand, sinking fast, and someone's going, oh, I think we have a problem. Yeah,
exactly.
We have. I'm up to my waist in quicksand.
Exactly. So if the client sort of says and gives you the permission to say, this is real time, and gives you the space to say, oh, there's maybe a red flag or an orange flag here, I think that can be a massive change for reporting on cost. But that's the client that needs to sort of be okay with that and change that, or at least be advised to do that.
A lot of the conversations we have around Europe are in relation to responsibility and in the contract. So in Denmark, on the AB contracts, for example, it's the design team's responsibility to control cost and report on cost.
Yes.
But our conversation with the design team and with the client is that, are you sure you have the right experience and capability in the stakeholder group to report for you? Have you the expertise on that? And if you were to look at it generally, the answer is no, because the team that are put in place have a responsibility to deliver something, and that's generally design. It's not economy management or economy steering. It's not cost management. And so what we're saying to the client is, contractually, they have an obligation to deliver their project on budget. But why not bring in us as the experts to manage that transparently with them, with you, so that you're in control and they're in control of their project? And it's a very difficult thing for that mindset to shift, because the client is saying, well, no, I take all the responsibility.
Yeah.
And we're saying, no, you're not. They still have contractual responsibility to deliver. And we as a group will discuss whether they are or are not delivering it on budget or on target or whatever that may be. Like going back to the foundations aspect.
Yeah.
Is the foundation accurate in terms of cost? Yes. Are we all in agreement? Yes. Something has changed. Why? Because of this. Are we all in agreement? Yes. The responsibility contractually is still there for the design team to deliver on budget. Now the client has much more transparency, and we're coming with an unbiased view.
Yeah.
Because we're just
reporting on facts.
Transparency. That's all it is.
Yeah, exactly.
We're unbiased when it comes to that.
Yes.
And that's a big shift. But I believe it's slowly happening. But
no, when I came to Denmark and worked at Covey, that was the mindset that we had to change.
Yeah.
And I think that's still happening.
Yeah.
The ability to have someone or a company that is responsible for that. And I like the way you say it. It's like reporting transparently on facts. Yeah. I'm just going to tell you as is.
It's as is.
You know,
because often you might get that bias sets in. So if I'm a designer and I've spent my effort now in working with the client, developing solutions, putting a design together, coordinating with the other stakeholder groups, et cetera, and then I do a cost calculation and it's 15% over.
It's way over. Oh, that cladding I like.
I put in a lot of effort into this now. Can we adjust anything? Can we take anything out to get the number down?
Yeah.
And the reality is that the 15% over is probably accurate.
Yeah.
But how can I submit my design after putting all my effort and then tell the client that we're 15% over at the same time? That it's a conflict of interest. You can't do it. It's a conflict.
It's massive conflict, because as an architect, you do want to have a design that you are proud of. Yeah. That's what the concept of value engineering is about, right? Yeah. So how can we deliver the same value with different
with
materials,
cheapest cost, the lowest cost, whatever the case may be. But that's the challenge. And that's how we kind of talk to our clients, is that conflict of interest is only going to create problems for you.
Yeah.
Having a specialist who's unbiased, because we'll tell you what it is. Yeah. We're not going to reduce the calculation just so that it's on the budget. We'll tell you why it's over. Yeah. And it's not at the end, we'll tell you why. It's along the process.
During, yeah, exactly.
We have a challenge here, we have a challenge there. We need to look at this, we need to look at that. You're asking for extra square meters, you're asking for extra material, the logistics, whatever the case may be of it. And that transparency, I think, is the key in the reporting.
Yeah, I think so as well. And that's why I see like a very parallel journey in how you guys are approaching things and how we are.
And so our last subtopic then is what are the challenges you guys are facing when you go and you speak to clients and contractors, subcontractors, specialist suppliers, whatever?
In terms of clients and contractors, I think we've been really embraced well by the industry. I don't find many challenges there.
Cool. That's super interesting.
if anything, actually, one of the challenges I think is getting access to all the suppliers.
Yeah.
Some of them will be more digitized than the others.
Yeah.
And when I say suppliers, I also mean by people who collect waste.
Yeah.
Some of them are really, really good right now where they've got APIs and we can fill. That's why we would recommend some people, some companies over the others, because they are more digitized.
More integrated, basically.
So I think it's a general digitization level across the whole supply chain in terms of suppliers and waste collecting companies. The other thing that we have is one of the things that's really made us so successful so far is our culture that we developed, which is about delivering service to the customer. And it's a culture that we've built, and that's one of the things that's of course going to be like our main focus, because we are growing so much. How do you maintain that culture with every new person that you hire, and you maintain the same quality as the sites get bigger, as more sites come? For example, we started the software thinking, okay, we can have like, this site. Now we've got sites which have got a site within a site within a site. That creates, more
complexities.
So I think it's about maintaining that high level of quality as we grow. And how to expand from Denmark. How do we grow that to something bigger? And again, it is about, I think the general idea is we're not going to go and put people on the ground in different countries. We would partner up, but we would try to pass on our knowledge and also get them to get value through our software.
I can think of a challenge going internationally would be, as you mentioned, the level of digitization in the supply chain will be probably your biggest stumbling block. And the second one then would be traditional mindsets. Why am I bringing in someone to do this for me when I always do, Jimmy or John does that for us the whole time. We just bring him in, he manages all of that for us. We can't see that there's inefficiencies in this. We also can't see that we could bring efficiencies to it at the same time.
You'll know it as well as I do. It's about timing, right? So if the timing in one country is for example, like Denmark, the reporting is this, and we need to get it done. The clients will ask for that. If they're not there in that country, it makes no sense to go there. So I think it's about like, is the wave starting to sort of go, and can we be brought over through some existing customers that might want to go there?
And maybe there's proportions of it that you can implement in other areas you can't. Like you mentioned the waste handling. If the entire supply chain isn't digitized in, weighing the skips, scanning them in and out, et cetera, then that's just the reality right now.
It is.
And you're going to have a workaround there to deal with that.
And we've done that. So for example, when we want to get a list of materials, we've got two ways to do it. One is the guys on the ground will take a picture of the delivery note, and then the AI will scan that and pick out. The other way is that we'll also connect directly with the suppliers. Once we've got permission via the client and then the subcontractors, we get that automatically through an API. So we've got two ways to sort of do that, but also two ways to sanity check that it's right. So it is about finding ways that suits where that country is and that digitalization level. But again, I think I'm quite confident in that because we try to solve the solution, and whatever needs to be solved the solution, we'll just do that.
It's kind of similar if we go into other jurisdictions and there already is standards for how you report and procure, etc. We'll just map whatever you need, your outcome as a client, into our structure, and you'll get the output you need, and we'll work in the structure in how we work. So that's how we create efficiencies, of course, not working in 15 different structures, but we have one way to work. And that has worked, and it will continue to work. But I find that the development of the industry right now is super interesting, and there's huge opportunity for you guys, especially on these major capital projects, for sure. The likes of the metros, where it's not just one site you're managing, it's 8. How many different stations do you have? 13 different sites. That's what we're talking about here. And the efficiencies you can create around that.
Exactly.
We have a metro planned for Dublin. It's been planned for 20 odd years. So it's going to be one of the most efficiently built metros ever because we've been planning it for so long. But it would be super interesting to see how SiteHub could support whatever contractor goes into that, or even the client themselves, of creating those efficiencies. But Gary, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes. We would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.